Warhammer 40K. Well, if you're gonna take that long to make a singular hammer, I'd hate to break it to you, we'll almost likely be dead by that time, so I'd cut production immediately. Okay, so what exactly is Warhammer? I don't know. Do you think I do research on these videos? Warhammer 40K is a miniature wargame. Ah, I see. It's a game where a bunch of introverts get together to become introverts together. I get it now. Yeah, but okay, in all seriousness, because I'm a very serious individual, Warhammer 40K is, as you just read, stop skipping my bit, is a miniature wargame that I guess is in the same vein as something like Dungeons and Dragons. Did I offend a fan by making that uneducated comparison? Well, come tell me I'm an idiot by joining my Discord server. Look, as little as I care about spending my life savings on a bunch of minifigures of obese men in Mega Man armor, Lord of the Rings default enemies, and a walking car radiator, I do know that this is a franchise that is mega popular. And what does the word popular usually get paired with? Corporate greed! And thus, many companies will attempt to bank on the success of said product by shoving it into as many forms of media as possible. And for something as long-running as something like 40K, I'm sure you know that we've got a lot of stuff to work with here. Books, audio books, which if you couldn't tell the difference, one is traditional reading, and the other one is if you want to have a voice in your head without the use of an echo chamber. Movies, porn, and lastly, but the most importantly, video games. And in terms of games adapting the Warhammer Universe, we're kinda spoiled for choice here, I'm not gonna lie. We've got RPGs, strategy games, dungeon crawlers, tower defense, unoriginal ideas, and shooters. Yeah, I saw this video in particular talking about the history of Warhammer games, and the thing is over 30 minutes long, and there are games in here that I've never even heard of that are part of this universe. So go watch that and see if there's something that you like in there. And if anyone wants to delve into the long lore on my history with the Warhammer series, well, for as long as I could remember, I was alive. I always saw the box art of Dawn of War 2 in a shop called Mazika, and I thought to myself upon seeing it, and then kept looking at the box art for Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness, and looking back at those simpler times, I think I made the wrong decisions growing up. But this box art would stick with me, and I'd always know about the Warhammer franchise for many years to come. Then fast forward a few years later, like we're skipping filler in Dragon Ball, and enter my brother. Don't enter my brother, that sounds fucking gross. And he would purchase himself an Xbox 360. And one of the games I remember playing on it was Warhammer 40K Space Marine, a third-person shooter based on the Space Marine faction from the universe. And this game was just fucking awesome. It's like they stole the ideas of another small niche indie game that no one ever heard of and made something truly special out of it. And then 5 years later, a mechanic that was introduced into this game will be shamefully stolen by another small indie game that no one ever played. Video game competition is brutal. Then as many years passed, I'd passively see other Warhammer games, some that caught my interest like Necromunda Hired Gun, and sadly no one online seems to share my optimism, to other games that make me feel like a toddler trying to understand rocket science. The only other games that I played that was related to Warhammer was Vermintide 2, which is essentially a Left 4 Dead clone, which is fun enough, aside from the fact that I can't beat the shit out of Tinky Winky with a guitar, and another Necromunda game, which I thought was Hired Gun, but in fact was not Hired Gun, and caused me even more irreparable trust issues. And as video games have evolved over the years, we've now been seeing quite a resurgence in games that were more commonplace back in the earlier years. We've had 3D and 2D platformers, Metroidvanias, but most importantly, out of all of them, boomer shooters. Yes, I've covered a few on this channel before, and by that I only mean two, but still, I've played and loved many of these kinds of throwbacks. Go watch those two other videos to give me ad revenue. I mean, get caught up to speed. So imagine my surprise when I heard the next game in the Warhammer franchise was going to be taking a break from real-time tactical combat, where each and every single move counts, where you need to place every single ounce of your tactical knowledge to ensure victory for your faction, to this. Welcome to Warhammer 40K Boltgun, bitches! Did I hurt your feelings by calling you that? Well then, tough shit! This game will actually increase your testosterone tenfold to give you the resilience to take my shit! This game is so good that good is an insult to how good this is! This game actually made a substantial growth to my Oh no, wait, it didn't. Warhammer 40K Boltgun is without a doubt one of the best games I've played all year, and I've played Redfall. This game had some tough competition that it needed to overtake. Boltgun is a retro shooter set in the Warhammer universe, and in this game you take control of Malum Cato, a space marine, which means he has guns, knows how to kill, and that's all that we need to know. And from what I've been able to gather in terms of story from this game, is there's nothing. I skipped everything. These are not cutscenes, these are distractions. But if I had to take a guess based on Malum directly referencing another character from the franchise, Captain Titus, I'm going to assume that this game takes place in between Space Marine 1 and the upcoming Space Marine 2. Now, whether or not this is the case, or this game just exists to keep us busy until the release of the sequel, that doesn't matter. This game is good, so sit on your ass and let me tell you why this is the case. Now, immediately, we need to talk about the first thing that your eyes are subjected to the minute that you load up the game. The graphics. I got you. You didn't laugh the third time either at my joke, so I know I'm just not funny. Leave me alone. This game looks absolutely incredible. Guns and enemies are all bit crushed to hell, most likely with a hydraulic press. Environments are blocky as shit, and it perfectly reflects shooters from the era like the original Doom, Duke Nukem 3D, Blood, and whatever the hell else look like this. And these environments are all absolutely gorgeous. We have snow, we have rock, we have cathedral, we have LSD trip, we have space Nestle factories. Every single environment looks absolutely amazing, and they're varied in the way they're designed visually, making you never get bored from entering a new level. On top of that, these stages are boomer shooter stages, meaning that they're filled to the brim with enemies, have got a lot of vertical level design that makes you have to adapt on the fly to each given situation, and they're huge. So what do you do in these levels besides walking in them? Well then, I'm glad you asked, because you don't really seem to be able to notice the obvious. You have to commit a lot, and I mean a lot, of non-aliving in order to reach point A to point B. But for the sake of being a boomer shooter, and hopefully not to pad out the game's length to a maddening amount, scattered throughout the stages there are 3 key cards that you're going to need to locate in order to progress. Not every single stage tends to do this from what I recall, and there's only ever 3 that you'll need to find, and you'll find them easier than a father that went out to get milk, so this isn't usually a problem. Also scattered throughout these stages there are secrets, just like any other boomer shooter, I guess. Do I sound not too excited about that? Well, then you'd be correct, which means you're really good at telling the tone of a person's voice, so here, have a gold star for your troubles. The reason I'm not exactly flipping my shit over this is that I'm pretty sure these secrets just have a label on them, and they aren't really secrets. It's just like buying Nike shoes. They may have a fancy label on them, but that doesn't change the fact that they're just shoes. Why I say this is that all these secrets are literally placed in locations where you'll easily find them, sometimes even in plain sight, and in places you'll tend to look anyway, because they usually have health and armor in these spots. So I guess these having the title of secret is just so that the player feels smart for finding them. And what are these secrets, you might be asking? Well, from what I was able to find out, they're usually finding stronger weapons earlier in stages than usual, or a bunch of different power-ups, and I do not know for the life of me what any of these do aside from the unlimited ammo one, which I mean is pretty self-explanatory. I would assume the other one is a damage buff, which I'm assuming is this glowing aura that shows your character is going further beyond. And the last one I was able to notice was Fist. I would rather not know what this one does because the results may not be very favorable. Oh, and there's some mods for your base gun too, I guess, but it still shoots bullets at the end of the day, so yeah! Now that's all for the stages. Now it's time to get into the real meat of the game, and that is the game. What do you do in your journey to get to the end of each environment the game throws your way? Well, this obviously. Yes, it's a boomer shooter. Do you know what that means? It doesn't mean anything. Here's a gun, here's some bullets, here's some assholes, now unleash your revengeance. Yes, as this big man, you are going to be running fast, jumping high, mantling up ledges. I cannot stress how much I love the mantling mechanics in this game. It's just like your character has hands. And increasing the mortality rate of each stage as you mindlessly slaughter each and every single enemy with a variety of weapons. 8 to be exact. You have the bolter, which is your pistol equivalent, but we don't need that cringe semi-auto shit. This motherfucker is an assault rifle, which doesn't mean anything because it's still like the pistol of this game, but at least it's full auto, so that makes it a little bit better. The shotgun, which is the only gun in any first-person shooter ever, because you aim, you shoot, you paint, you cock. It's like a morning routine, except this one will land you in prison. After that, you get the plasma gun, which is what you think it is. Giant-ass balls killing people with a nice explosion to the face. My personal favorite gun for this game specifically, because I'm loyal to my one true love, the heavy bolter, which is essentially the chain gun of this game, and just look at the carnage and listen to how this thing sounds. Need I say more? I can practically hear you leaving your wife. This game is gonna be the cause of many marital problems. This gun, which makes you look like you tore off a car's exhaust and now you're just blasting toxic fumes at everyone for massive damage. Much like the crowd. A bolt gun, That's the name of the game, where you shoot exploding bolts that stick into enemies and blows up in seconds. Why does that sound phallic? A laser gun, which if you've played Metal Slug, I don't think I need to say more. It's a laser that guns. I'm extremely good at describing things. It's like that one time I helped a family with directions. I never really did hear from them again. And another laser gun. But green. And it makes enemies hurt more. I love video games. Oh, and you get a few grenades, which is hotkey to the Q button. So that's nice. But bullets are better. Overall, all these guns are incredibly fun to use, as they should. And this being a retro boomer shooter with a bunch of different kinds of enemies, it's best to use some guns on some enemies and others on others. And this game is going to cause you to have some sort of commitment issues, because just staying on one single gun isn't really going to do the job, unless you think pelting this chunky fuck with a pistol for 30 minutes is a good idea. Then what can I say? More power to you. But since we are a space marine, we also have two more things up our sleeves, if you can consider these things sleeves. We have a handheld chainsaw, which slows down times and gives us the ability to homing attack. I wonder why I'm making that comparison. As well as this dash, which I just thought was a quick boost of speed until I watched Jarek the Gaming Dragon's video on this, in where I learned that you're able to damage enemies and splatter them like you're this dog from Yomawari. But while we're on the topic of damaging enemies, let's talk about the enemies, shall we? Because without the enemies, we'd just be shooting at the walls, floors, and ceilings of each and every single stage. And property damage may be appealing, but it's not exactly why we're playing a retro shooter, now is it? Nah, my good gore connoisseur, seeing red is where it's at. Except if it's your red, then it's not that fun. So in terms of enemies, we have our usual cannon fodder, you know, the ones that we laugh at because they drink water at a frat party. Some stronger enemies that'll take a little bit more to kill, but still pretty easy and fucking tough. And then these special enemies like the Chaos Space Marines and Chaos Terminators, which are the big boys that laugh when they get shot with bullets until they melt, as well as bosses. So that's probably my only complaint when it comes down to this game. I didn't find the enemies all that interesting, but then again, I'm not so familiar with the lore of Warhammer, so probably seeing some of these enemies made you feel like this, but to me, I just saw them as enemies that when I shoot them, they die, and the only reason I was even able to remember some of their names is because of this nifty little health bar at the top of the screen that displays their names, as well as this number beside them. Which, if I'm being completely honest here, I do not have any fucking idea what this number is supposed to mean. Is it their level? Is it how many people on the internet find this thing attractive? Why is this here? But I do kind of appreciate the fact that there's a health bar for some of these enemies. With how many you need to slaughter all at once, knowing how close some of them are to dying really helps you keep tabs on certain enemies and which ones to prioritize during the scuffle. This game would have been a survival horror otherwise. And as for the bosses, they're just enemies with Prodeus levels of health, and that is a word that I needed to use. Some of them are just big chunks and others are little bitches that shield themselves using whichever poor soul is in the environment. But ooh boy, do not, and I mean do not underestimate these fuckers, because much like any other normal boomer shooter, this game is hard. It's so easy to get overwhelmed in this game. You'll be dying over and over and over again, but I should stress that the game's difficulty is more on the fair side than the bullshit side. Yeah, sure, it might feel sometimes that it's on the bullshit side, but that's probably just you being in denial. There's almost no loading times in between you dying and you restarting your last save. So at the end of the day, it's one of those fair challenges that you will overcome after a few tries. And like I've just said, there's no loading times in between you dying and your last save. And what I mean by that is that you can save at any point in the game, and the game will restart you immediately back to where you last saved at, with the enemy health still left as it was. But for all the praise that I give this game, I do have a few complaints, but these are literally so minuscule that you can neglect them as easily as you do your son. Firstly, and this is another issue that I have with a lot of these retro throwbacks, is that the environments are gigantic, and I have no issue with this. Big fight need big places. This isn't Black Friday, we need some breathing room. But sometimes with these larger environments, it can sometimes feel a little bit difficult to figure out where you're supposed to go, and there isn't really anything that can point you in the right direction. Now, this is probably more so a me problem. My directional skills are just as useful as a sat-nav you bought from Wish, but sometimes it did catch me off guard and sometimes led me to only finishing certain stages around the 50-minute mark. Yes, my weekends are usually open, how could you tell? Next up are glitches. I honestly found these more funny than game-breaking. Sometimes my weapon model just didn't load back into the screen, so it looked like I was playing a crappy hunting game on the Wii back from 2013. Other times, my chainsaw was just stuck with my character looking like he's having war flashbacks after killing someone with a hedge trimmer. So thankfully, like I mentioned, none of these glitches were game-breaking, but I do still feel like they need to be brought up, otherwise other YouTubers will make fun of me. Sometimes the game did freeze and crash on me, but I wasn't really able to record this most of the time, so I'm not able to present this evidence in court. Sometimes I would experience frame drops, but this is legit just when a lot of stuff was happening on screen. Other than that, the game ran extremely smoothly, despite being an Unreal Engine 4 game. Makes me wonder how last-gen systems would handle this. And the two final complaints are just really nitpicks, so you can skip to this point of the video if you don't want to hear them. You really thought I was gonna let you skip? Firstly, this game has no quick save option. This makes me incredibly sad. Do you not see how much I am crying right now?
Why is this burning so much?
Why do some of these shooters not let you do this? F5 is right there. And finally, the game is a lengthy motherfucker. Yes, that is not a lie. And neither is this. And neither is this.
Wait, what the fuck?
This game is a beefy thing, and out of all of the boomer shooters I've played in the past, I'd say that this is the longest one by far. Some games like Ultrakill took me around 5.5 hours, Prodeus took me 7, and finally Aatrox took me around 9 hours. So the time it took me to finish this one singular game is literally the same length as all of these games combined. And yes, this may include times like me pausing for a while, me getting lost, or me dying over and over and over and over again, but still, even after overcoming all of those obstacles, the game just kept going and going and going. But at the very least, I can say I still had a lot of fun with this game all the way up to the end. Even with 18 to 20 hours of total gameplay under my boot, I still loved every second of it. So why do I cite that length as a potential negative? Well, I mean, most of you play Fortnite, so that's the first problem. And secondly, the amount of fun that you'll have with this game, along with the length of it, depends entirely how much you like this kind of game. Are you willing to put up with a small weapon pool of 8 guns? Then cool. Are you willing to not be able to turn into Logan and need to manage your health and armor manually, and failing to do so will lead to your inevitable death? Then cool! Are you willing to put up with the game being at some points maze-like and painfully difficult at other points? Then cool! I actually like you, you're not cringe! But if you're not willing to put up with all that, then the fact that the game takes as long as your typical story-based game like Waifu Impact, I don't think that'll help change your mind either. It'd be much easier to recommend you other games like the aforementioned Ultrakill and Aatrox. Not Prodeus all that much, that game wasn't exactly the greatest. Because with those games at the very least, if you're willing to try out an older style shooter, you don't really need to dedicate that much time and energy into them like you need to with this game. But with all of that kind of stuff aside, if you're willing to push through all of that and enjoy every single thing that this game has to offer as a casual fan and or a shooter fan, then you're in for one of the best games of 2023. Oh, hello everybody. Yeah, it's been a month, which is longer than 29 days. I guess. So, I guess the most pointless thing to say now is, do I recommend Warhammer 40K Boltgun? Yes, the 17 minutes I spent talking about it and saying it's one of the best games of 2023 should have already been indicative enough. So, 2 more things that I need to mention. You can taunt in this game, which makes you feel even more like a badass than you already are. And secondly, a thing that I should have mentioned that I don't like, for some reason you also need to reload every single gun, but at the very least, unlike Prodeus, it didn't feel as intrusive, and it also didn't feel as, it just felt faster. It didn't feel like it was a hindrance or anything, so I could have let it slide a little bit. But yeah, as you guys have seen at the beginning of the video, I do now have a Discord server, so if you guys want to chat with me, partake in polls, post memes, do anything like that, help me come up with new video ideas, then the link to that will be in the description below and on my channel if you guys want to join there, as well as if you guys want to, I have now decided to launch channel member, so if you guys want to support the channel financially in any way, then the option is there. Never feel inclined to do this though. Also, if you guys want to catch me live, I do sometimes stream here on YouTube. I do also have a Twitch and a Kick if you guys want to follow that. But regardless, I hope you guys all are having a fantastic day. If you guys liked the video, please consider dropping a like and subscribing. If you guys didn't like the video, then you are not allowed to sit next to me on the bus. But in any case, I've been John from the channel with the freakishly long name. Thank you guys all so much again for watching. I will see you all in the next video.